Icebreaker Snow and the Lost City is the third book in the Icebreaker Snow series. Written by Timu Lupala, illustrated by Petri Cantonimi, translated by Lola Rogers, and this Arctic adventure is read by Jennifer Bradley. The Archipelago Sea looked and felt like winter. The islands and skerries were covered in a blanket of white, and the ice was covered with dunes of snow piled up by the night wind. Along the island shores, the water that had been frozen since early winter was still solid ice. But there were already signs of spring. Here and there on the eastern shores and straits, the ice had started to darken from the increased sunlight. Along the jutting points of land, it was already turning thin. But ice-breaking season wasn't yet over, and all the icebreakers were at work, helping the ships in and out of the harbour. Icebreaker Atlas was helping a large freighter from India named Indian Star wind its way to sea through channels between the islands and sea rocks. Mr Utö, the lighthouse, watched closely as Twinkle the pilot boat made her way to the meeting point. Twinkle had been sent from her post at Hamaja to the pilot station at Lighthouse Utö, and she had gone straight to work. The Indian Star was the third ship she had piloted here. Twinkle was excited about her new post. The change of scenery did her good. It gave her a chance to get to know an entirely new place, with lots of islands, shoreline, and skerries of sea rock. There was a lot to see and learn. She was also getting to know Mr Utö, who had lots of experience keeping sea traffic safe here in the outer islands. You're getting the hang of it, Twinkle, Mr Utö said with satisfaction.
I've had a good teacher,
Twinkle answered.
I noticed that we have to be especially careful around the Traton Rocks. It's hard to see the heavy seas there in the autumn or in the dark, and if the ice starts moving, it makes it even harder. You have to be on the lookout every moment.
Right you are, Mr Utö agreed. That's why you should always keep your distance from the Traton Rocks, no matter how much of a hurry you're in, and make sure your gear is always in good trim, because conditions can change very quickly.
I know, Mr Utö. I've had quite a few similar situations at Hamaja,
Twinkle said. Atlas was already nearing the meeting point. He moved along the same channel that Icebreaker Snow had opened up when the Archipelago Sea started to freeze at the beginning of winter. But making way through the slushy channel was difficult, and a large ship like the Indian Star sometimes had to use all its power to keep up with Icebreaker Atlas. Atlas was a veteran and could tow even very large ships if needed, but there was no need for towing now. This was a leisurely trip, and Indian Star had carefully followed all of Atlas's instructions. Atlas had heard Twinkle and Mr Utö talking, and he jumped in to reminisce about the old days.
We've had quite a few adventures around here, Twinkle, over many, many winters,
Atlas said.
I'm sure Mr Utö remembers what happened to that Belgian container ship, the Cameron. It got caught in the ice and started to drift toward the Lilharan Skerry. The Cameron would have run dangerously aground if I hadn't got there in time. And thanks go to Mr Utö. He was keeping a close eye on the situation, and he alerted me right away.
You're very welcome, Atlas. That was quite an adventure, Mr Utö said.
Indeed it was,
Atlas replied, smiling contentedly and slowing his speed. He radioed the Indian Star.
Indian Star, Atlas here. Do you read me?
Indian Star here. I read you, Atlas.
You have just a ship's length to go to reach pilot boat Twinkle. You can slow your speed to 1 knot. Atlas said. "Roger, Atlas. Slowing to 1 knot. Everything's ready," said Indian Star.
"Ready on our end,"
Twinkle said. When Twinkle had detached from the side of the ship, the Indian Star increased power to his engines, and Atlas led the way safely out to sea. This was Indian Star's first trip to an iced-in northern harbour, and everything had gone wonderfully, thanks to the careful guidance of the icebreakers.
"Have a good trip to the Pacific and down to the equator,"
Twinkle said.
"There at least you can be sure your propellers and ropes won't freeze up."
"No, they certainly won't. It's been quite an experience being up here in the ice. The next time it will be so easy, now that I know what to expect. That's the way it always is," Mr. Utö piped in. "You just have to see and experience something to know it and understand it."
"True,"
Twinkle said.
"Everything here in Utö is new to me too."
She wished the Indian Star pleasant sailing.
"Bon voyage, Indian Star," Mr. Utö shouted. "Thanks. See you,"
Indian Star answered with a smile and followed Atlas out to the open sea. Indian Star was safely on his way, and Twinkle chugged back toward the pilot station, breaking the ice in front of her with her bow. She watched her radar attentively, and everything seemed to be going smoothly. The rocks and islands were becoming more familiar with each mission. Mr. Uto's advice was important, and Twinkle had taken all of it to heart. But at that moment, she saw a large, dark cloud that looked like a powerful snowstorm approaching from the north. What in the world could that be? She wondered. No one had mentioned any possibility of a sudden change in the weather. Twinkle grew worried and looked at her radar again, and then, without any warning, all of the rocks and islands disappeared from the screen. In their place, there suddenly appeared a strange green spiral pattern that filled the screen and steadily rotated. Her radio started to make a loud, sputtering static sound. Twinkle tried to radio Mr. Utö and Icebreaker Atlas, but she couldn't reach them. It was time for Twinkle to trust what Mr. Utö had taught her. She turned on her headlight, engaged her engine, and prepared to meet the storm. Suddenly, her radar screen went out, and the radio static stopped. At the same moment, the massive cloud overtook her. She was inside the storm. It was very quiet and dark. Twinkle wondered where she was going. It felt as if something were leading her forward against her will, as if she were floating lightly in the air. Something very strange was happening. Then all at once, the storm stopped, and there in front of Twinkle, beyond a veil of drifting snowflakes, appeared a bright, icy cove, and on the shore surrounding it was a grey, medieval city. The black roofs of the buildings were tall and jagged. The shore was lined with many sheds, salt storehouses, and grain silos. There was no one to be seen, and not a breath of wind stirred in the air. It was as if Twinkle had slipped into the past. Mr. Utö was watching carefully as Twinkle returned from the Indian Star to the pilot station at Utö Island. He was worried when he saw the peculiar snowstorm coming from the north at such high speed, and he tried to warn Twinkle by radio right away, but he couldn't reach her, no matter how many times he tried. Mr. Utö realized that something strange had happened. The snowstorm had already passed, and the air was clear again, but he didn't see Twinkle anywhere. He could see the channel she had left in the ice, and it ended abruptly in the middle of the sea. Where was she? They had to start a search right away, he decided. Mr. Utö acted fast and sent out an emergency radio alert.
"Pan, pan, 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 pan! All stations, all stations, all stations! This is Lighthouse Utö," he said. Pilot boat Twinkle has disappeared half a mile northwest of the Little Notgrunskeri. Request all ships in the area to be on the lookout and contact Utö. I repeat, contact Utö.
Atlas was the first to answer the call.
Atlas here? What exactly happened? We were just looking at Twinkle and now she's gone?
It all happened so fast, Mr. Utö replied worriedly.
A strange snowstorm came at high speed from the north and overtook her. When it had passed, she was nowhere to be seen, and all that's left is her trail in the ice. It just stops in the middle of the sea.
Tugboat Zeus joined the radio conversation and volunteered for search duty. Tugboat Zeus and diver Rovi were just completing a job not far to the east.
Zeus here, Mr. Utö. We heard your alarm and your radio conversation. We're headed straight over to help as soon as diver Rovi is back on deck.
Excellent, Zeus. Your experience and Rovi's diving skills might just come in handy in the search. Say hello to Rovi. See you soon.
Mr. Utö answered. Zeus was a small tug, but all the stronger for it, and he knew how to break the ice. His special skills were tugging ships and conducting special rescue operations all along the coast from the archipelago to the North Sea. This time, Zeus had his good friend Rovi the diver with him. Rovi was small, but very experienced. Zeus and Rovi had seen a lot together, and their know-how was bound to be useful. Icebreaker Snow was floating in the open gulf to the north, waiting for his next assignment. His engines were off, and he was taking a well-earned rest. Mr. Utö's message took him completely by surprise. Twinkle? Missing? What exactly had happened? He decided immediately that his other jobs could wait. For now, he had to go and help Twinkle. Icebreaker Snow fired up all his engines and turned his bow toward Utö. Ice churned in his wake as he set off toward the place where Twinkle had vanished. When he reached full speed, he contacted Mr. Utö.
Snow here, Mr. Utö. Do you read me?
Mr. Utö here. I read you. Where are you, Snow? Came the reply.
I'm already on my way. It'll take me a while to get there. You had better begin the search as soon as any help arrives.
Snow said. Icebreaker Atlas, Tugboat Zeus, and Diver Rovi will be here soon. We'll begin the search as soon as they reach the spot where Twinkle disappeared, Mr. Utö said.
Ah, good. Rovi can search the sea bottom at the site of the disappearance, and I'll be there as soon as I can.
Okay, Snow, said Mr. Utö.
The thin ice crackled as Twinkle eased her way along the wharf. High-sided sailing ships lined the docks. Looming grey grain silos hugged the shore. On their sea-facing walls, there were lifts with rope pulleys. Some had heavy-looking grain casks hanging from their hooks. Not a sound could be heard anywhere, and nothing was moving, not even a breath of wind. Where in the world am I? Twinkle wondered. The place was like the lost city she'd heard about in stories. Legends told of a bustling town built on an island, a city on the route of the Hanseatic League of merchants that plied the Baltic Sea hundreds of years ago. According to the story, there was a terrible blizzard that came and covered the town, and afterward no one could ever find the city again, and those who did find it could never return. Twinkle gasped, suddenly realizing what had happened to her. How would she ever get home again? Tugboat Zeus had arrived at the spot where Twinkle had disappeared. The diver Rovi hung impatiently from the lift cable as Zeus slowly lowered him into the cold, slushy sea.
Hurry up and get me in water,
Rovi said.
I am,
Zeus answered, carefully monitoring the descent.
Once I'm underwater, we can keep in touch by radio, Rovi said.
Okay, Rovy, stay sharp down there and keep me updated.
"Will do," said Rovy, eager to start the dive. Rovy sank past great chunks of ice and slush and into the chill water, still attached to Zeus's cable. He turned on his bright diving lights. Daylight still gleamed through the hole in the ice, but the water below was black darkness. Rovy scanned the area as his experience had taught him, looking for signs of Twinkle, but he didn't see anything. He asked Zeus to lower him deeper. Rovy descended on the cable lower and lower, right beneath the spot where Twinkle's trail in the ice ended. As he sank further into the water, he turned on his small but powerful thrusters. The visibility began to clear as he neared the bottom, and the beam of his light reached farther and farther. He signaled Zeus.
Zeus, this is Rovy. Just 10 more meters to the bottom. I'm disconnecting from the cable. Visibility is already considerably improved. Do you read me?
Zeus quickly answered.
Roger, I'm right here. Disconnecting cable. Any sign of Twinkle?
I can see the bottom clearly, but there's no trace of Twinkle,
Rovy answered.
Continue the search over a wider area and be on the lookout,
Zeus said.
Roger. I'll contact you immediately if I find anything,
Rovy answered. Zeus notified the others that diver Rovy was already at the bottom and hadn't yet found any trace of Twinkle. Icebreaker Atlas decided to continue his search around Utö Island. Icebreaker Snow was quite near now and radioed to Zeus.
Zeus, this is Snow. So, Rovy hasn't found any sign of Twinkle on the bottom?
No, the whole thing is very strange,
Zeus answered.
It really is,
Snow said.
You couldn't reach Twinkle by radio during the storm, and now she's vanished?
That's right, said Mr Utö. The whole thing happened very fast. I don't understand it.
Twinkle disappeared at the spot where her trail in the ice ends. There must be something peculiar about that spot,
Snow said, thinking out loud.
Zeus, tell Rovy to come up and investigate the spot where she vanished one more time.
Okay, Snow. Good idea. I'll radio Rovy,
Zeus answered. Twinkle circled the entire harbour looking for any sign of life. There was none. The grey, lifeless city was impressive, but she didn't like being there alone in a place without a single other soul in it. She wondered where Icebreaker Snow was right now, and whether he even knew that she was gone. Sadness started to overcome her, and she decided she had to find a way to get back to Snow and her other friends. She started signalling for him on her radio, repeating the same distress call over and over.
Snow, this is Twinkle. Can you read me? I got caught in a snowstorm and ended up in the lost city. Somebody answer. Snow, this is Twinkle. Do you read me? I got caught in a snowstorm and ended up in the lost city. Somebody please respond.
Rovy was back near the surface now, investigating the slush-filled hole in the ice. His bright lights reflected colourfully on chunks of ice floating in the cold water. He still couldn't see anything, no sign of Twinkle. He would have to go up to the surface to check his instruments and rest before another dive. He radioed Zeus. Zeus, this is Rovy. Still no sign of Twinkle. Lower the hook so I can come out. I have to gear up for another dive.
Roger. It's too bad there's still no sign of her,
Zeus answered a bit dejectedly. Zeus lowered his hook into the water. Rovy manoeuvred himself precisely below it and radioed that he was ready. The hook attached, and the trip to the surface began. Rovy was disappointed that he hadn't found any trace of Twinkle. Just as Rovy was about to reach the surface, the beam of his light suddenly fell on a chunk of ice farther off that had a strange green glow. What was that? Rovy thought, and asked Zeus to stop the cable.
Zeus, this is Rovy. Stop the lift. I'm seeing some kind of very strange light. I have to go look at it immediately.
Roger, Rovy,
Zeus said.
I'll leave the hook where it is. Tell me right away when you know what's going on. Icebreaker Snow is here now too.
I'll contact you as soon as I know anything, Rovy answered. I'm on hook now and heading toward the green light.
Rovy moved toward the light that floated somewhere in front of him. A sound of static started to come from his radio, and beneath the static, a faint, intermittent voice. A strange feeling came over him. The voice almost sounded like Twinkle. Could it be her? He wondered as he came closer and closer to the green light. The light was growing brighter. To Rovy's surprise, it was coming from inside an enormous block of ice, a steady green glow moving in a spiral pattern. In the middle of the spiral, there was an ice cave. Rovy wondered excitedly just what exactly he had found. The sound from the radio continued, and now he could clearly recognize it as Twinkle's voice.
Snow, this is Twinkle. Do you read me? I got caught in a snowstorm and ended up in the lost city. Please respond, came Twinkle's repeated message.
Rovy was right in front of the moving green spiral now. It felt as if the cave in the ice were pulling him toward it. He didn't dare come any closer, and instead decided to answer Twinkle's distress call.
Twinkle, this is Rovy. I read you. I repeat, Twinkle, this is Rovy. I read you.
A joyous voice came back in reply.
Oh, Rovy, is that you? Sure is. Diver Rovy, at your service, Twinkle. Where am I, Rovy? I think I must be in the lost city, like in the story. There's no life here at all. Time has stopped and everything is gray and quiet.
Rovy answered. I'm under the water near the place where you disappeared. There's a slowly turning spiral of green light right in front of me, and in the center of the spiral there's an opening. I don't dare get too close to it.
Oh, that's odd, Twinkle said. When I was in the snowstorm, the same pattern appeared on my radar screen. After that, I found myself here. Now I have to get out of here somehow.
She sounded a little panicked.
Don't worry, we'll find a way,
Rovy said firmly.
I'll tell Snow and the others that I've made contact with you and inform them of the situation. Thanks, Rovy,
Twinkle said. Rovy's thrusters spun steadily, keeping him motionless and stopping him from being pulled into the cave. He didn't understand what was going on or how to get Twinkle back again. They had to do something. He radioed the surface.
Zeus, this is Rovy. I have contact with Twinkle. I repeat, I have contact with Twinkle.
Rovy, this is Zeus. So you found her then?
No, Rovy answered, and he told them where Twinkle was and how she had come to be in the lost city. He also told them about what he saw in front of him. Snow heard Rovy's report and responded.
There has to be a solution,
Snow said.
We'll get Twinkle back somehow. It sounds like we may be dealing with an Archimedes spiral. What does that mean?
Zeus asked in amazement.
I've heard of something called Archimedes' spiral. It's when a point moves in a spiral pattern at a constant speed, as long as it keeps a constant distance. If the distance changes, then the movement stops. Can you see a point moving along the spiral, Rovy?
Rovy looked closely and saw a point of light.
I can see a dot near the end of the spiral, Rovy said. That might mean that if the movement stops when the dot reaches the end of the spiral, it will be too late for Twinkle to escape from the lost city,
Snow said worriedly. Atlas had arrived now and was listening to the discussion.
I seem to recall that in the legend of the Lost City, there were 2 blizzards, one right after the other, he said. Do you think that old story could be true?
If that's what the legend says, then we have to take it seriously. We have to be ready to get Twinkle out of there at the precise moment when the point of light reaches the end of the spiral. It's our only chance. Is the dot very far from the end of the spiral, Rovy?
No, Rovy answered. At that moment, Mr Utö saw a snowstorm just like the one before rapidly approaching from the north. He quickly notified the others.
Attention all ships! Large snowstorm approaching from the north at high speed. This might be the moment Snow was talking about, the second blizzard.
We have to act fast, Snow said. Rovy, notify Twinkle that she has to get back immediately to the place where she appeared in the Lost City. Then you can go to Zeus's hook and attach yourself so we can get you to the surface as fast as possible.
Roger that, Snow, Rovy answered. Rovy radioed Twinkle and told her about the plan. Twinkle realized that this was her chance to get out of the Lost City. She quickly said goodbye to the grey docks and buildings and headed along the ice channel the way she had come. There wasn't a moment to lose. As she made her way back to her arrival point, she started to hear static on her radio again, and the same green spiral she had seen before appeared on her radar screen. Snowflakes had begun falling thick, and there was no visibility at all. It was dark and quiet. Twinkle was tense. She didn't know what was going to happen. Would she be able to get home to her friends? Mr Utö urged Zeus to act quickly. The blizzard was already quite close. Snow, Atlas, Rovy and Zeus had to move away from the spot where they thought Twinkle would reappear. Snow and Atlas moved away from the end of Twinkle's path and readied themselves for the coming storm. Zeus's lift was still out, and the cable and hook were still in the water.
Rovy, what's your situation?
Zeus radioed, his voice filled with worry.
The snowstorm is getting very close. Hurry!
I'm on the hook now, Rovy answered tensely.
Roger, Rovy, I'm pulling you up. Hold on!
Okay, I'll be fine, Rovy answered. The snowstorm was nearly upon them when Zeus pulled Rovy out of the water, sending bits of ice flying. Zeus started away with all his engines at full throttle. Rovy dangled over the ice as Zeus sped away. Then the blizzard hit. There was nothing to do now but hope for the best. Darkness and silence covered everything. The evening light was low as the sun set in the western sky. From the center of the cloud of snow brought by the storm, Twinkle appeared, smiling happily and rocking from side to side. Her eyelashes were caked with ice, and her deck was covered with snowdrifts. Twinkle looked at Icebreaker Snow and said,
Snow, this is Twinkle. Do you read me? I'm back from the Lost City.
She repeated the call playfully.
Snow, this is Twinkle. Do you read me? I'm back from the Lost City.
They all started to laugh. Snow looked at Twinkle with a happy smile and said,
Snow here. I read you loud and clear, Twinkle. I repeat, Snow here. I read you loud and clear.
Twinkle answered with a wink and pulled up to nestle against Snow's side. The worry about each other and the worry that they might never see each other again was over. It was good to be back together. Though the signs of spring were unmistakable, the ice was still strong. There would be plenty of work for all the icebreakers before the time came for a well-earned vacation. It had been an unforgettable day in the islands. The story of the Lost City was true. The End.